Welcome back to the Elise Surkov podcast. I'm going to talk about how granular do you need to be when it comes to tracking your food, losing weight. Should you be weighing your food? Should you be measuring your food? Oh my God, it's so obsessive. It takes so much energy. I hate it. It makes me obsessive. I've heard all and more when it comes to should you actually be weighing your food? Should you be logging your food? Should you be counting calories? Should you be counting macros? So let's dive in. So I will start by saying that when I first got into this space, when I crossed over the line into the nutrition space, it started actually I started as a macro coach. So I was very much into macros because macros is like 80% science, 20% lifestyle, which I live by. Very much the 80-20 rule. I love science. I love to understand the reasons behind things. And so macro counting just really resonated with me. And if you don't know what macro counting is, I'm going to really simplify it here. Macros is short for macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So you've got macronutrients and you've got micronutrients, which is your minerals, your vitamins, and your water. Okay. So when we look at macro counting, we look at where calories come from. And so the way I like to say it is calories are king, but macros or protein is queen. So if you're trying to lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight intentionally, so you want to add muscle and you want to add a little bit more to your frame to help build that muscle, then you're going to need to eat in a bulk. If you're trying to maintain your body, you don't want to gain weight, you don't want to lose weight, then you're going to want to eat in maintenance. And if you're trying to lose weight, then you're going to want to eat in a deficit, a cut, or in a diet. You're going to have less calories. So when we talk about energy, it is all about the calories. So when we look at two people who are losing weight. Let's say they're both a 5'5" female and they're 180 pounds and they both lose weight to be 150 pounds. They're going to look different, not just because they're physiologically unique, but let's just say they're both on a 1,700 calorie diet and they, let's say, lose the same amount of weight, quote unquote. What's going to be the difference between focusing on only calories and focusing on macro counting is what you look like. So when you count calories, you're going to determine how much weight you're going to lose. When you count macros, you're going to determine what that weight loss is going to physically look like on your physique. And this is why macro counting is so important, because if I put you on a 1,800 calorie diet, you could be eating donuts, McDonald's, Sour Patch Kids, ice cream. You could eat whatever you want. And as long as you stuck to that number, you're going to lose weight. 100% you will. This is the law of science. You can't deny it. However, if I put you on that 1,800 calorie diet and I had you count macros, so I said, yeah, 1,700 calories, but I want 120 grams coming from protein and the rest coming from carbs and fats, then you can't have 1,700 calories worth of donuts and or McDonald's. You're going to have to get strategic. And spoiler alert, if you care about your health, your physique, longevity, vitality, then you're going to have to get strategic with your diet. Food is a pleasure. It is also a poison. So what you put into your body is going to determine how your body performs for you and, of course, how you look. And if you care what you look like, which I know you do, then you're going to want to really make sure that you're focusing on your macronutrient count. Okay. So how do we count macros? A lot of women come to me with the Weight Watchers mentality. And oh my fucking God, this is a headache. I always say I have to beat the Weight Watchers out of you, literally. I have yet to meet a woman, myself included, who has done Weight Watchers and doesn't have food obsession. Because in Weight Watchers, they teach you how to Tetris your food and cheat the system. This only has 0 points. This has 1 point. I'm going to eat all the Crystal Light and Jello that I can possibly eat. It's like, girl, everything fucking counts. If you haven't listened to that podcast, please go listen to that one and come right back here. So I have to change that mentality of like everything count. Now, I see this a lot clinically in the other way, where a lot of women come to me and they're like, I eat protein, I have fiber. And I'm like, how much protein are you eating? They're like, I'm eating 150 grams of protein. I'm eating 1,500 calories. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. That's a lot of protein for a little amount of calories. Like, that still counts. Your calorie consumption is coming from protein. So you're having chicken and beef and eggs, and you're skipping out on the donut or the delicious carbs or the whatever it is. So we need to pull that back, because you need to have that balance. You can lose weight while having a donut or having carbs, like of any kind. In fact, you're going to need that. I'm not saying go ahead and have a donut for breakfast, but having a fucking donut isn't going to change anything for you as long as you're in your calorie range and in your macronutrient range. So the way that we teach macro counting, I will do a whole episode in the future on macro counting, but the way that we teach macros is to never need to count again. Now, some people will always count and track their food, and they do this for their own reasons. But what I hear typically is like, it helps me stay on track. I make sure I don't overeat. I make sure I'm eating enough of the right foods. I don't mind doing it, and it keeps my weight where I want it to be. Fantastic. What I hear a lot of women also say to me is, I don't want to track my food because it's too obsessive. I think about it all the time. And I did that once and it was just all I can think of, and I don't want to do that. And I immediately crack that shit down. And the analogy I like to use here is, you can say to me that it's obsessive, but that's just a mindset shift. That is, I've got to flip your script. So if you came to me and said, I can't save money, and I'm like, all right, well, I want you to create a budget and track every fucking penny you spend. You can also say to me, but that's obsessive. I just can't do that. That's just so much energy. Then all I'm thinking about is money. And all I'm thinking about is every penny I'm saving and every penny I'm spending. And I'm like, good, you should. And then you need to learn how not to do that. So like, if you're like me and you go to Costco and you leave with a $400 bill and you're like, what the fuck did I buy? Then you need to start going into Costco with a budget and a list so you don't overspend. And at the end of the month, if you're still not saving money, you got to do it again. So you can say it's obsessive, or you can say this is eye-opening. This is temporary. Yes, I need to put in the energy and the time and the focus to learn what my body needs to be fueled properly, so then I can determine how to lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight. What most women do is they track their food to lose weight. They use MyFitnessPal, they take it down to 1,200 calories, and they're like, this shit isn't working. And I spent all this time tracking my food and it's not working. And now I'm just obsessed with it because I'm eating 1,200 calories and the scale's going up. And I'm like, you're lying to yourself. You think you're eating 1,200 calories. You are not reporting about 30% at least of what you're eating. So you're lying to yourself. So what you think you're obsessed with is like 70% of reality here. So you need to get granular for at least a little bit. And I encourage you to do it in a way that is going to be educational. Now, the other thing I hear is, but I have daughters at home and I don't want my daughters seeing me track my food because I don't want to give them an eating disorder. I don't want to give them obsession. And I'm like, or flip the script. I also have a daughter. She's 17. She sees me weigh my protein. The first time I started weighing my food, she looked at me and said, you're weighing your food now? And I just looked back and said, yeah, got to make sure I'm eating enough. And she just went, oh, okay. Instead of me saying, I'm doing it to diet. I'm doing it because I want to lose weight. I'm doing it because I'm so fat and I have to get skinny. So you see, like, how you respond is everything. It's just flipping your script and saying, I am doing this so I can learn. My son has type 1 diabetes. We count carbohydrates. I can carb count any fucking carb you put in front of me. You put a donut, a bagel, a piece of bread, a fruit. I can carb count that shit like no one's business because I've been doing it now for 9 years. Is that obsessive? Owen's going to have to count. Owen counts carbs. He looks at a meal and he says to us immediately, how much? That's his like, how much should I bolus? How many grams of carbs should I count for this? And we'll look at it and we're like, that's like 40 grams worth. That's 45 grams worth. That's it. Well, he needs to have a certain amount of carbohydrate count in his body in order to make sure that he's growing and developing. Most 11-year-olds do not know this or do this, but he does because he has type 1 diabetes. And most diabetics should, but typically they do know exactly their carb count. They know how many carbs they need to be having, how many carbs are in something to cover that insulin. Does that make them obsessive or does it make it strategic? Oh, I need to make sure. When, how do they know how many carbs? All right. Well, let's say Owen has some rice and we say cover for 40 grams. We think that's 40 grams of carbs. He gives himself 40 grams worth of carbs and insulin. Let's say it's 2 units of insulin and his blood sugar runs high. What did we learn? Fuck, that's not 40 grams. That's more. All right. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is we could weigh the food or we could measure the food. So we can use a measuring cup or we can use a food scale and say, oh, actually, 1 cup of rice is X amount of grams, and this is 1 cup of rice. Okay. Now, I'm at the point right now, we're living with diabetes for 9 years. I don't fucking need to weigh or measure anything, but I did at the beginning. There was a food scale and measuring cups for everything O and ate. So we knew how to cover the right amount of insulin for it. I don't do that anymore because now I can eyeball it, but we get it wrong sometimes. What happens when I get it wrong? He either has a low blood sugar, we gave him too much insulin, or he has not enough insulin and his blood sugars go high, in which case we do a correction. That right there is feedback. Okay. So, hey, his blood sugar is running high. I've got to give more insulin. Next time, I need to cover more. The same is true when you start counting your food or counting your macros, tracking your food, is you're like, oh, my weight is still going up. I don't think I'm counting accurately here. I thought that was 1 cup, but you know what? Let me weigh it. How much does 1 cup of rice weigh? And then you're like, fuck, that wasn't a cup. That was a cup and a half. No wonder my weight hasn't changed. Now we're getting really granular. So now you know what 1 cup actually looks like. You're not stuffing that cup and that rice down to make it, like, you're not packing it in to make it fit. Okay. So when it comes down to how granular do you have to get, I really encourage you, if you haven't already, to do it. And while you're doing this and you're tracking your food, please, girl, keep it fucking simple. Don't go making 1,000 recipes, because the next thing I hear is, well, I just don't know how to account for the recipes. I love to cook and I make this and there's no way that I can take this. I'm like, it doesn't have to be fucking perfect, but try not to make such intense recipes. If you are very regimented in your cooking like I am, try to keep it simple. Okay. So like Mondays we do stir fry. Tuesdays we do fish. Thursday, Wednesdays we do tacos. Like whatever it is, try and just kind of get an idea. And that might mean like when you're making tacos, I don't know how much meat I'm taking. Well, maybe weigh your meat 1 or 2 times so you can see this is what 3 ounces of ground beef actually look like. This is how much it looks like. This is what it is. Otherwise, you're guessing. And while you think you're tracking 1,200 calories, lo and behold, you're actually tracking 2,000 calories. Now you're getting frustrated as fuck. You think it's obsessive. You think it doesn't work. You're going to come at me and tell me that you don't want to track your food. And I'm like, oh no, you're just not doing it for the right reasons. Okay. So if you haven't done that before, I really do suggest a tracking app. MyFitnessPal is great. I've got nothing against MyFitnessPal except they default everybody to 12 or 1,400 calories. So ignore that. If you need a macro counter where you're like, I don't know how to count macros or I don't know what to set my calories at, I'm going to link it below. I have a free macro guide. And in that macro guide, there is a calculator that you can go ahead and plug your information in and it will roughly calculate. I say roughly because like my calculator doesn't know you. It doesn't know your hormones. It doesn't know your lifestyle. Okay. But we're going to just kind of guess it a little bit and it's going to be way above 1,400 calories. Then from there, go ahead and use any app you want. If you want to use MyFitnessPal, Macros First, Chronometer, there's so many out there. There's way more than what I just suggested. Go ahead and put that in and then just start getting really strategic on what you're eating. When you do that for 7 days, and that includes over a weekend, you're going to start to see information that is going to be really positive feedback into why things are or aren't working. Now, one thing I like to say also on this note is that the goal of macro counting is to never need to count again. So no one leaves us counting unless they truly want to. So when you're counting and you're like, this is hard, congratulations, you're doing hard shit. Good job. Keep going. and it will get easier. And then eventually you don't have to track anymore. Now, if you're someone who is like, I used to do that and I lost so much weight when I did that, congratulations, you're getting great feedback of what you're actually eating. I recommend that every 6 weeks for 1 week or at least 5 days, one being over the weekend, you track your food again. Because what happens is that we get super granular and then we swing the pendulum in the other direction and we stop counting everything. And then we don't have any feedback. And if I added in a half a cookie to your diet, chances are you wouldn't feel it. And if I added in a little bit of cream in your coffee, you wouldn't feel it. And if I added in half an avocado every day, a teaspoon of peanut butter, 2 teaspoons of peanut butter, you wouldn't notice it. But at the end of the year, you're up 5 pounds and you're like, I don't understand why. I barely eat. That's why you've lost that feedback. So every 6 weeks, I recommend just tracking a little bit to make sure that you are eating where you should be, whether you want to be in a cut, a deficit, maintenance, or in a bulk. Now, chances are you are constantly going between overeating and undereating. So if you haven't tried maintenance yet, I challenge you to try maintenance for 1 year. And I promise you, your life will be amazing. Maintenance is hard, it is strategic, but most people, again, maintain by overeating and undereating. So if you can just maintain the same amount of macros every day, calorie count every day, it's going to be so beneficial for your hormones, especially in perimenopause and menopause, and then for your physique as well. So go ahead and give that a try. If you need more help or support, I will put all those links down. Let me know how this episode lands for you. I'd love if you can share it with a friend who might be struggling as well. And then tell me what you think. Leave me a review or go ahead and shoot me a message. Until the next time.